What up, goobers? Today we're talking about directing. In my limited experience of directing short films, short documentaries, and commercials, there's basically three things and a secret fourth thing that a director can do with the camera to communicate their vision. First one is composition. Composition is more than just showing the audience what you want them to see. It's communicating perspective. Taking advantage of the cinematic language that's been developed for 100 years at this point can emphasize different character moments and bring your audience into the piece. If you want a character to feel more powerful than another character, film that character from the perspective of the lower character. Film them from low to high because they have the high ground.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! I'm upset!
Looking up at a character subliminally tells the audience that they have power. Looking down at a character communicates just the opposite. The second way a director can use their camera to tell their story is with movement. There's a lot of movies that have a lot of unnecessary camera movement, but the best kind of camera movement is the really subtle ones to emphasize a performance. My favorite is the dolly in Casablanca. It's like it dollies in like halfway, like, do we want to go there? And then it dollies in the entire rest of the way into the flashback. Such a beautiful use of the camera. Other times it just communicates energy. Other times it just tries to get the audience in the feel of the scene. In the movie Knives Out, the entire first half of the movie is played on dolly or on sticks. The camera doesn't move, or it moves very smoothly. There's a calmness, there's a sense of stability, there's a sense of proceduralness almost to the story. It's slick, it's clean, and it's not grabbing your attention too much. But then at the midpoint of the story, almost exactly halfway through the movie, when we find out that the caregiver Marta is the recipient to this billionaire's will, the camera actually pulls off of the tripod and starts to follow her in a handheld way. This to me is a directing choice with the camera that I just love. The thing I don't like is when there's movement throughout and it feels unmotivated. Motivated movement is the key. David Fincher, the director of Social Network, The Killer, Seven, he wants the camera to be almost omnipotent. It moves with the actor when they move. So if you look at a lot of his movies, the movements are very lined up with when a character moves and how. So a character starts walking down a hallway, the camera follows them. Character stops in a living room, turns to the right, and then starts moving, camera follows them. It helps the audience lock in to that character's world and go where that character is going. And the third way is actually with cutting. When you're on set, you're not making a movie, you're gathering assets. The movie is actually then made and put together and built in the computer. You want to give your editor options to cut between, but also you want to control how that edit progresses. And for a lot of people that shoot and edit their own stuff, I've had plenty of those moments where I'm trying to edit something and I'm like, why didn't the DP shoot this? And then I'm like, oh wait, that's me. Approaching each scene like an editor, giving options and also providing coverage is important. However, you want to be specific with what your coverage is. Maybe you're shifting coverage to a different setup at a certain point in the scene where a character says something that's supposed to be emphasized. I did this in my short film, The Session. There's a very cordial conversation that's happening, and then there's a realization of a much darker reality, and then it cuts to a different type of coverage. Looking at the script and figuring out when the coverage needs to change is very beneficial, and it can really elevate your work. And the secret fourth way of directing through the camera is to not use the camera. Move your actors around a space, leave the camera where it is. Let them dictate what's important. One of the masters of this was Blake Edwards. He directed Breakfast at Tiffany's, the original Pink Panther trilogy. Oftentimes he would just mount the camera to a specific position and let the actors move around a space. Part of that has to do with the way that we experience movies now. On the big screen, a big wide, you can see a lot of detail. And you can see the actors even when they're not close to the camera. And you can see their expressions and their performances. Nowadays, with the small screen, cameras have to be closer into a lot of things, which means more cutting. We also have to compete with the smartphones in our pockets, so there's more cutting just to create more interest. Walter Murch, one of the best editors of all time, he wrote the book on editing. It's called In the Blink of an Eye. In this book, he theorizes that a cut is similar to a blink when you're experiencing something. When you walk into a room, you survey the entire room. Actually, like if you monitor yourself, you will do this. When you walk into a new space, you look at the whole room. Maybe you walk into a diner and you look around and see that not many people are there. Then you blink, cut into a more specific action. Oh, they have food here. What kind of food do they have? And then you cut again into an even more specific action. You look closer to see they have fried chicken and you see if it's any good. It isn't. And you're sad. Understanding how people perceive reality gives you a way to manipulate it. Composing characters in a way that makes sense for the story, moving the camera when it's appropriate, and choosing coverage that dictates the flow of how the audience is going to experience that story. That's what directing is.